Hey folks, how's it going? My name is Brian Sanyshyn, composer, music educator, and founder of the Game Audio Company. If you're watching this video on YouTube right now, here's a little bit you need to know before we get started. This video is part of a series called the Game Audio Company Academy Launchpad, which is part of our audio learning series inside of our Skool community on Skool.com. Okay, so if you're somebody who's just getting started on your journey in composition or sound design or anything game audio, we highly encourage you to come and join us over on Skool, where you'll have access to more in-depth conversations, in-depth videos and resources and peer reviews and webinars and that sort of thing. So if that's something that piques your interest, it's free to join. Please come on over and join us, and we'll see you there. All right, let's get to it. All right, welcome back. I hope everybody had a minute to maybe get up and stretch their legs, get some something to drink, some coffee, some tea, something a little stronger. Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to talk a little bit about virtual instruments and plugins. All right, so obviously, if we are getting into composing, the first thing that we want to reach for is what are we going to sound like? What are the instruments that we're going to use? Okay, and so you go on to Google or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever it is, wherever it is that you find your information these days, and you do a search, what VSTs should I use? Right, and you'll start to get lists with some pretty huge sample libraries with some pretty big numbers attached to them, $600, $500, $1,000, right? And looking at that, that's really intimidating, right? One thing that I am going to dispel right now, and I think anybody in this space who's been doing it for any amount of time will tell you, is that the cost does not in any way imply quality, right? And that's not to say that the stuff that is expensive is bad, right? But it does mean that the stuff that is free is not bad, right? There is a lot of really, really good quality, good sounding VSTs out there that cost nothing, or they're very inexpensive. Okay, so the first thing I'm actually going to address is not the instruments. It's going to be some other plugins, things like EQs, compressors, reverbs, all that stuff. Okay, and I'm going to echo the sentiment of many of my my colleagues online who say you really don't need to reach for anything outside of what comes with your DAW. Okay, whether you're in Logic or you're in Cubase or whatever it might be, right? They all come with, stock plugins. And all of those stock plugins are very, very good. Okay, so you can do an entire mix using just the stock plugins and you will get a really, really good sound. Okay, it's also not necessarily worth investing any significant or even insignificant amount of money into VSTs that you don't know how to use yet, right? So if, it doesn't make sense for you to go and spend $400 on a compressor if you haven't learned how to use compression yet, specifically as it pertains to working with VSTs, right? Because the way that you approach compression with a VST is going to be a little bit different than if you're compressing a guitar that you're recording right into, right into your audio interface into the DAW. Okay. Same thing with things like reverbs or EQs, right? So I feel like we're very naturally drawn to things that look good. They're visually stunning. They've clearly spent a lot of money on developing the UI and all these things, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to be spending money on something that you don't necessarily know how to use yet, and the quality difference in what you paid for it versus what's already available to you and something you already paid for, there are very quickly diminishing returns there, right? So whether you're in Logic or you're in Cubase or you're in Studio One or, whatever it is, really get comfortable using the stuff that is already available to you for free before you go out and spend a lot of money. Okay. One of my, my ThinkSpace tutors, his name was Mike Worth. Mike is an Emmy-winning composer, orchestrator. He's just a phenomenal, great dude. Somebody that I would love to have into our Skool community for like a little Q&A one day. I think that that everybody I know that has ever interacted with him just really enjoys him. But I remember right around the end of my master's, he was trying to force himself into only mixing with the plugins that were available in Studio One. He uses Studio One as his his primary DAW. And this is somebody who's won an Emmy, right? So there is no reason that you shouldn't feel that the stuff that's available to you in your DAW is perfectly sufficient. Okay, learn how to use it. Research the way that these tools have been used before. What are they modeled after? What were the original pieces of gear? How were they used? Listen to a lot of things and just get comfortable with all that stuff, right? Use what is available. You don't need to go out and spend a lot of money. Okay, one of the things that I'm really hoping that this community doesn't become is just sort of a sales pitch for all of these different libraries. And you have to use, this Cinesamples library over this Spitfire library, because at the end of the day, it's just not true, right? There are situations where you might want to use one or the other or both, right? And so to sit here and try to make the argument, that you have to use one over the other, in both my opinion and in my experience, is just sort of futile. Okay, so that's sort of my 2 cents on that. Okay, now with that being said, we do need to get our hands on some sounds, right? So most DAWs come with some stock sounds, okay? And similarly to what I just said about using plugins, there are many very decent VSTs available, like stock sounds available, right? That you can get used to, learning how to play with MIDI, how to edit MIDI, learning, what CC controls are and how you should be approaching using those when you're creating your stuff. Okay, so it's a really good place to start. Okay, branching outside of what is available in your DAW, there are a good number of companies that offer very high quality free VSTs. Okay, and actually the first orchestral library that I got my hands on, outside of, I had done the East-West subscription. They have a cloud composer, I think it's called. We'll talk maybe about that another day. But one of the first really good free libraries that I got was by Spitfire Audio, and they have a few years ago they had this flagship library called BBC Symphony Orchestra. Okay, and they had invested just tons and tons of money, and it was very, very detailed, very, very high quality virtual instrument that a lot of people use, and they offer a sort of slightly reduced version of it, completely free, $0, right? And you get access to this. Look, free. Right? You get access to 34 different instruments. You get a couple of different articulations, right? They just added a piano, right? Which was not there when it first came out. Okay. And it is, compatible with major software all the way from GarageBand to Pro Tools. Like I said, you can use it with anything. And it's free. Can't beat free, right? And Spitfire Audio is one of the sort of the big names when it comes to producing VSTs. I have a large number of their other libraries, okay? And this one is really, really fantastic, okay? So if I were you, and you're just getting into specifically orchestral composition, right? Don't feel like you need to go and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a piece of software, right? You have companies like Spitfire that are like, come and try this out first, right? And then if you find later on that you want to have access to some more of the instruments that were part of the greater thing, or you want more articulations, or you want to have a little more control, right? Then you might want to spend the money. But learn how to use the thing first. And it's not only a matter of just learning it. I would feel very comfortable writing a full track, a full piece of music using just BBCSO Discover. Okay, and that's actually something that I think I am going to do in this community at some point for maybe a webinar or a live stream or something like that, right? But it is a very good piece of software. And there are a number of other ones, right? So there's another company called ProjectSAM, okay, that, they have a number of free instruments, okay? And they're all really, really good quality. Orchestral Tools, another one, right? This Berlin orchestra is is a very, very well-respected library, and they're giving you access to some of it for free. Okay. Now, obviously, some of that is they want you to try them out so that later on you go and spend some money, right? Like I don't want to hide behind the business side of that. Like there's very clearly a reason that they are doing it, but it's still free. It's still free. It's $0. It costs you nothing, and you can, the user agreement isn't that it's free and you can only play around with it. You can produce stuff and you can put it out in the world, right? So make sure that you go ahead and you read all of that stuff on your own. Don't take my word for it. But they are very good products, and they cost nothing. They cost nothing. Okay. It's a good place to learn. It's a good place to start to learn how to, do things like build templates and that sort of thing, which we're going to talk about at some point, probably not in the Launchpad, but maybe later on in a greater video. Okay. So while there are, while there are free virtual instruments, there are also tons of free and fairly inexpensive plugins, right? And so I'm not going to, sit here and pull up a million different ones, because a quick Google search will give you some really, really great stuff. And, if you get it and it's free and you download it and you install it and you try it and it sucks, it was free, right? But if you went and you spent $600 on a sample library that you were really excited about, right? And you go and use it and you spend some time with it and you're like, I don't really love it. That sucks. Speaking from experience, right? I have fallen into that trap that I got really excited about a sample library and I bought it. I spent a lot of money on it, and it sits in a folder on my computer and it almost never sees the light of day, right? So this is a really good place to start, right? Before I even tell you to go and spend any money on anything. And I certainly could. There's stuff that I use that I would encourage people to get their hands on if they could. But, like I said, I don't really want to fall into that trap of this community becoming about, well, Brian uses this and he says it's great, and so therefore it's great. It's like, no, that's not the reality. There are things that I use for the circumstances that I find myself in, and I tend to, I do a consistently similar type of work, right? But if I, had to broaden my horizons and do work outside of my comfort zone, I'd reach for something else. You know what I mean? But check out what's free. Don't spend money. You don't have to spend money. Spend the money later on when you're comfortable and it's something that you really want and that you're really going to use. But you do not need to spend a lot of money out of the gate. Okay? All right. So that is it for the what do I need, physically need, software needs to get started. Right? So to reiterate a little bit from the last video, right? A laptop, a desktop, whatever it is, PC, Mac, doesn't matter. Minimum of 16 gigs of RAM. Okay? An audio interface, headphones, a MIDI controller, a DAW. In some cases, you might already have one for free if you have GarageBand on your Mac, right? Or you can get Logic, you can get Cubase, whatever, right? And then get yourself a couple of these free VSTs. Just download them, install them. They're a great place to start. Okay? All right, that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.